He built an empire that never bent. Until the night she didn't say a word, she just picked up her bag and left. Have you ever walked away from something so quiet? It haunted you louder than anything else. Draven Lang didn't ask where she went. He didn't follow. But when she returned, she wasn't alone, and the child had his eyes. What do you do when the past you buried walks back in and calls you Daddy? The city below never truly slept, but up here, everything was silent. Manhattan's skyline blinked dimly through the glass, reflecting the cold blue light from the office monitors. The rest of Lang & Rowe Capital had gone dark hours ago, but on the 49th floor, one desk still flickered. Draven Lang's watch read 11:17 p.m. He wasn't surprised to see himself still at his desk. He rarely left before midnight. But he hadn't expected anyone else to still be here. Yet across the room, quietly seated, Sarai Eleanor was still working. Her desk lamp glowed low. Her shoulders hunched over a set of financial reports. She hadn't noticed he was watching her. Or maybe she had, and just didn't care. She wasn't supposed to be here this late. Junior analysts didn't stay past 8 unless ordered to. But Sarai wasn't typical. She never asked for permission, never called attention to herself. She did the work, quietly, flawlessly, like she had something to prove, but no desire to be seen. Draven leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen once against the side of his desk. Still, she didn't look up. Finally, he broke the silence. You find what's wrong with Zurich? Her voice didn't falter. I think so. But it's not where the model flagged it. There's a shortfall in the back-end interest projection. She slid the file into her bag. I'm done updating the quarterly charts, but I'll redo the Zurich report in the morning. He stood, walked toward the drink cart. You always stay this late? She finally glanced up. Her eyes looked tired, but not weak. Only when the numbers don't make sense. He poured a drink, neat. Poured another, carried both back. She hesitated before taking the glass. He noticed her fingers trembled slightly. You eat anything today? He asked. She didn't answer. That was the moment he realized she wasn't just tired, she was running on fumes. Her voice came quiet, low. I stopped waiting for people to check on me. He sat down across from her, drink in hand, and the air shifted. I just do the work, she said, finishing her sentence. That's what gets noticed, not who you are. He should have said something measured, should have made a comment about professionalism or boundaries or company policy, but he didn't. He watched her set the glass down gently. Her eyes didn't dart away. They held him, steady, clear, even in fatigue. There was no makeup on her face. Her curls had started to slip from the knot at the back of her head. She wore a simple blouse, navy slacks. No effort to impress, just presence. And that presence cracked him. Come here, he said, voice low. She didn't flinch, didn't smile. She stood slowly, walked over. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a game. It was something else, something unspoken. And when her fingers brushed the edge of the desk, he kissed her. Soft at first, then real. There was no rush, but no hesitation either. It wasn't about desire. It was the only language either of them trusted that night. Afterward, she adjusted her blouse, smoothed her skirt, picked up her bag. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just turned and walked out. The door clicked behind her, and he never asked where she went. A week later, she submitted her resignation by email. No meeting, no formal goodbye. Draven didn't fight it. He buried himself in work, told himself it was better that way. He never brought it up again, to anyone. Until 3 years later, when she walked into his boardroom. That night, after the meeting, Draven didn't speak to anyone. Not his assistant, not his driver. He turned off his phone, walked out of the building without a word. The Manhattan streets buzzed with their usual noise, horns, footsteps, sirens, but to him, it all blurred into static. His feet moved, but his mind was stuck somewhere else. Not just stuck in the boardroom, stuck in the space between that boy's eyes and his own. Stuck in the echo of a voice that said, I'm Elias. He didn't need a DNA test. He knew. There were certain things that didn't lie. The tilt of Elias's chin, the exact brown-gold shade of his irises, the way his left eyebrow curved downwards slightly more than the right, exactly the same as his did in every passport photo. And Sarai, she didn't try to hide it. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it. She didn't offer him anything at all. And that silence, that was louder than a confession. He walked until the city thinned, until he found himself near Central Park, the edges lined with lamps, shadows stretched across pavement. It was where he used to come during the early days of building Lang & Rowe, when deals went south, when funding fell through, when stress kept him too wired to sleep. But tonight wasn't about business. It was personal, and he didn't know how to process it. He'd never had a child, never planned to, never thought it was the right time. He'd avoided attachment like it was a contagion. Relationships were things other men in his position fumbled through. He'd never wanted to be distracted, but this wasn't a distraction. This was a consequence. A living, breathing child, one with his features, had walked into his boardroom, not as a burden, not as a weapon, but as a quiet presence, a gentle extension of a night he had boxed away and labeled irrelevant. And Sarai, she had raised him, alone. While Draven sat in meetings, signed deals, flew to Geneva and Tokyo and Madrid, she was, what? Waking up for midnight feedings? Attending pediatric appointments? Navigating motherhood without so much as a call from the man who helped create that life? He lowered onto a bench and buried his face in his hands. The shame landed slowly, not all at once, but in waves. He had never even asked if she was okay after that night. He remembered how she stood up after they were done, how she had to hold the edge of the desk to steady herself, how she'd looked away to adjust her blouse, how she walked out, not in anger or embarrassment, but with silence. A silence he let stay because it was easier than confronting what they had done. He hadn't been cruel. He'd been distant, worse than cold, detached. And now, that detachment had a cost. A son, a boy he had never touched, never met, never even imagined existing until today. 3 years old, old enough to talk, old enough to form memories, old enough to look at him across a table and wonder who he was. And Draven? He was nothing to him. Not a father, not a name, not even a presence. He stood again and walked the park path in circles, jaw clenched, breath uneven. There were no good answers. He could blame Sarai for keeping it from him. He could argue that he had a right to know, but deep down, he knew why she hadn't told him. Because he hadn't given her any reason to believe he'd care. He had treated that night like a glitch in the matrix, like something out of place. He hadn't acknowledged it in words, hadn't spoken to her afterward, hadn't checked in, even once. He let her leave. And now? Now she'd returned on her own terms, not to seek help, not to beg, but because she had something to offer a client. She walked into his world again, not for him, but despite him. And she'd brought his son. He stopped walking, stared at the dark pond, reflecting the skyline. He had always been proud of what he'd built. Lang & Rowe was efficient, high-performing, respected. Clients trusted him. His employees followed his leadership. He knew how to handle markets, downturns, negotiations, legal battles, hostile takeovers. But this? A woman who had walked away from him with quiet dignity, and a boy who looked at him with his own eyes. He had no strategy for this. Back at his penthouse, Draven didn't sleep. He stood by the window with a glass of water in his hand, untouched. The city lights below were a blur. He stared down at them, wondering how many times Sarai had walked those streets with Elias, how many nights she'd gone home carrying everything on her shoulders, how many birthdays had passed. He didn't even know what month Elias was born. That cut deeper than he expected, not because he wanted credit, but because he had missed everything. He had missed his first steps, his first word, his first fever, the first time he scraped his knee, the first time he cried in the dark, the first time he asked where his dad was, if he had asked at all. Draven closed his eyes and leaned his forehead against the cool glass. He didn't know what came next. Did he have a right to ask? Did he have a right to reach out? Would Sarai even accept that? She hadn't said anything, not one word about Elias's paternity. She'd treated him like a client, like a stranger. She had made it clear she wasn't seeking anything from him. That didn't make it easier. It made it worse, because now the burden of asking for space in that child's life fell on him. And that would take more than status, more than wealth. It would take the one thing he had avoided for years: humility, the quiet kind, the kind that didn't come with applause or control. He pulled out his phone. No texts, no missed calls. He stared at her name for a long time, still saved in his contacts, even after 3 years. Finally, his fingers moved. Dinner, just us. I need to understand. He hit send before he could overthink it. And this time, he didn't expect her to answer. But 2 minutes later, the bubble appeared. Okay. Draven exhaled. Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. He didn't know what he would say, but for the first time in years, he knew exactly what he needed to do. Draven arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes early. It wasn't a flashy place. Not the kind he usually booked for clients or celebrations. No skyline view. No candlelit tables or wine-glass theatrics. Just a quiet bistro on 63rd, with soft booths, clean lines, and a menu that didn't try too hard. He didn't know what Sarai liked anymore. He didn't know if he ever really had. But this place felt honest, not trying to impress, not trying to sell anything. He sat at a corner booth and kept his phone face down. He didn't order a drink, didn't open his laptop, just waited. At exactly 7:59, she walked in. Same calm walk, same steady gaze. No makeup, no performance. Her hair was tied back in a low, simple bun. She wore a muted grey dress, high neckline, long sleeves, paired with low heels, effortless. She spotted him instantly and made her way to the table without hesitating. "Hi," she said. "Hey," he replied, standing briefly before sitting again. She slid into the seat across from him, folded her hands in her lap, her bag beside her. Nothing about her posture was cold, but it wasn't open either. She wasn't here for small talk. The server arrived with menus. She asked for hot tea, he asked for water. Silence settled between them like a third person at the table. "I appreciate you coming," he said. She nodded once. "You said you needed to understand." Her tone wasn't sharp, but it didn't soften to meet his discomfort either. He took a breath. "That boy, Elias, he's mine, isn't he?" Sarai didn't blink. Yes, there it was. No build-up, no resistance, just truth. He felt it hit, like something heavy that finally had a name. No speculation. No maybe. "You knew I didn't know." "Yes. And you chose not to tell me." "I chose not to involve someone who didn't ask a single question when I left." That landed like a slap, but she hadn't raised her voice. He leaned back, guilt tightening across his chest. That night was a lot of things," she interrupted, quietly. "But mostly, it was a moment that meant something to me. And you didn't say a word afterward. You didn't even look at me the next day." "I didn't know what to say," he admitted. Sarai's lips twitched, not in humor, in disbelief. "So, you said nothing." She stirred the honey into her tea, then looked at him fully. "I didn't come here to accuse you. I didn't come back to drop a burden on your life. I came because the non-profit needed help. I stayed because Elias deserves to know where he comes from." His throat felt dry. "He doesn't know about me?" "No, not yet." He looked down. "Why?" "Because I wanted to see if you were ready to be someone he could count on first." Silence again. When the food arrived, some soup and salad she'd ordered, and a steak he barely remembered requesting, they both ate without rush but without much appetite. He wanted to ask 100 questions. What hospital? What did she tell Elias when he asked about his father? Had she suffered financially? Did she ever almost reach out? But he couldn't ask those things, not yet. So instead, he said the hardest thing first. I failed you. Her eyes didn't change, but her shoulders dropped slightly. I don't need an apology, she said, but I needed you to know that you weren't absent by accident. You made a choice not to care. I adjusted my life accordingly. That wasn't what I meant to do. I know, she replied. But it's what you did. Draven nodded slowly. Is he happy? He's loved, he's safe, he's sensitive, like you. Observant, he draws, loves puzzles. Always wants to understand how things work. He swallowed tightly. I want to meet him properly. Sarai looked at him for a long moment. Not yet. His stomach clenched. Why not? Because I don't need you to meet him out of guilt or shock. I need you to meet him because you plan to stay, because you're ready to show up, not because you suddenly feel something tonight. I want to be part of his life. She tilted her head. And what does that mean to you? Draven paused. It means not disappearing again. It means listening, learning, trying. Sarai's face remained unreadable. I don't expect you to become a father overnight, she said softly, but I need consistency. He needs it. You don't get to come in, stir up questions, and then vanish if it gets complicated. It won't. You can't promise that. I can, he said, meeting her eyes. Because I've never regretted something more than how I handled that night. And every second since I saw him, I've felt what I lost. Sarai looked away. A flicker of emotion passed over her face, but she didn't let it linger. He's never asked why he doesn't have a dad, she said. But one day he will. Draven's jaw clenched. When he does, I want to be there. She didn't respond immediately. Finally, she nodded once. We'll start with time. Not introductions, just time. What kind of time? I'm at a cafe on Madison most Saturday mornings. He likes the puzzles they keep by the window. You could show up. It wasn't a warm invitation. It wasn't a guarantee. But it was a door cracked open, and Draven knew better than to demand anything more. I'll be there, he said. Sarai finished her tea, gathered her bag. She stood first. As she stepped past the booth, she paused, just for a moment, and said without turning back, He has your eyes. I hated that at first. Now, I think maybe it means something. Then she walked out. And this time, Draven didn't let her disappear. Draven didn't go home after Sarai left the restaurant. He sat in the booth for another 30 minutes, untouched drink on the table, untouched steak going cold. The din of the bistro continued around him. Cutlery, low conversations, the occasional burst of laughter from the table behind him. But his world had narrowed. She had given him a sliver of access. Not forgiveness, not reunion, but time. Show up, she said. She hadn't smiled when she offered it. She hadn't softened her voice, but she'd said it. And that was more than he deserved. Back at his penthouse, the lights stayed off. He sat in the dim living room, staring out at the Manhattan skyline, her words turning over and over in his mind. I don't expect you to become a father overnight. No one had ever called him that. Not in any context. Not in any way. He didn't know how to hold the title. But he wanted to try. By Saturday morning, the nerves had settled into his bones. It wasn't the boardroom kind of pressure, not the familiar weight of a high-stakes negotiation or a closing deal. This was personal, and it was unfamiliar. He dressed simply, dark jeans, a plain navy shirt, a light jacket. No power suit, no polished shoes. He didn't want to come in as the CEO. He wanted to come as a man trying to make up for lost time. The cafe on Madison was small, sunlit, with front windows facing the street and a shelf of children's books and puzzle sets in one corner. He arrived early, asked for a table near the back, and ordered a coffee. Sarai walked in at 9:07. Elias was with her. The boy had on a green jacket, dark jeans, and small sneakers that lit up red when he stepped. His curls were fuller today, less styled. He held a folded coloring sheet in one hand and a little fabric pouch of crayons in the other. He looked happy. Draven stood. Sarai gave him a quiet nod. Elias looked up at him, curious but without recognition. Sarai crouched beside him. Eli, This is Mr. Lang. He works with one of Mummy's clients. He's joining us today. Elias tilted his head slightly. Do you like puzzles? Draven blinked. I do. Do you? Elias nodded and pulled out a small foam cube from his pocket, the kind made for little hands. This one's hard. Want to try? Draven lowered to his knees without thinking, accepting the cube. Let's figure it out. They sat at the low table by the window. Sarai ordered tea. Draven got another black coffee. Elias ordered a banana muffin and pointed out that it had chocolate, chips, which made it almost breakfast and dessert at the same time. He was smart, focused, polite without being coached. Draven watched him as they worked on the puzzle together, Elias guiding him on which piece went where, correcting him gently when he placed a square upside down. No, like this, he said, small fingers flipping the piece. Draven smiled. You're good at this. I practice, Elias said simply. Sarai watched the two of them with unreadable eyes. She didn't interfere, didn't coach Elias on how to behave. She let it happen. Let them meet without interference. Let them bond at their own pace. And Draven felt something he hadn't expected. Peace. It came slow, quiet, not as a wave, but a warmth. Something that replaced the shame, the tension, the fear. Elias didn't know who he was, but he was letting him in anyway. And Sarai? She was watching. Carefully, but she didn't look afraid. The hour passed quietly. The second puzzle replaced the first. Elias got frosting on his fingers and laughed when it smeared on his coloring page. He pressed his hand into the page and made a print. Now it's art, he said. Draven chuckled. You should sell that. Elias looked serious. Mommy says we don't sell everything. Sarai smiled faintly. Draven held back emotion as he looked at her. She had done this. Raised this boy, shaped his heart, protected him without turning him cold. She had done what he hadn't. When it was time to go, Elias packed his crayons and slipped the puzzle back into its box. Are you coming next time? He asked, glancing up at Draven. Draven nodded. If it's okay with you. Elias shrugged, unconcerned. Okay, just don't take my muffin spot. He pointed at the chair he'd been using. Draven smiled. Deal. As they left, Sarai hung back a moment while Elias skipped ahead to the door. He didn't ask who you are, she said quietly. Draven kept his eyes on the boy. I know, but he will. And soon, I'll be ready. She looked at him for a moment, as if trying to decide whether she believed him. Then she said, We're here every Saturday. You don't have to warn me. Just be early. He nodded. Thank you. She turned to leave, but he called gently, Sarai. She turned slightly, eyebrows raised. Why did you let me in at all? Her eyes didn't soften, but her voice did. Because even after everything, you showed up. She walked out before he could respond. Draven stayed in the doorway, watching her and Elias disappear into the morning crowd. 3 years too late, but not too late to start. He didn't know what this would look like 6 months from now, if he'd be introduced as a friend, a father, or something in between. If Sarai would ever let herself need him again. If Elias would grow to know his face as more than just a Saturday morning regular. But he knew one thing. He would keep showing up. Without cameras. Without speeches. Without excuses. He would earn the name he hadn't even heard yet from his son's mouth. Not with words, but with presence. And for the first time in his life, that felt like enough. What would you do if you showed up years too late, but the door wasn't fully closed? Have you ever had to prove you're different? Without saying a word? If this story has you thinking about second chances, drop a comment, like the video, and don't forget to subscribe. The next part will shake you deeper. Draven wasn't used to waiting for people. His world moved on decisions, precision, and speed. Clients didn't delay when he called. Partners didn't reschedule. Every meeting he entered, he controlled. But Saturday night, at a modest restaurant in the East 70s, he was the one adjusting his cuff, checking the door, feeling the clock tick. He'd been early again, not out of habit, but out of nerves. He had already seen her once this week, already sat across from her, and their son already begun unraveling the quiet damage between them. But tonight was different. Tonight was for everything that hadn't been said. No Elias, no puzzles, no buffer, just Sarai, and the truth waiting in her eyes. She arrived without fanfare as always. A long navy coat wrapped around her, curls free and full tonight, face bare of makeup again, but radiant, effortless. Draven stood. Sarai sat down across from him with a nod, eyes calm but alert, not guarded, just awake. The waiter brought water, menus, offered wine. She declined. Draven didn't bother ordering any either. "I'm not here for food," she said plainly, setting the menu aside. "I want to hear what you need to say." He leaned forward slowly, folding his hands on the table. "I think I owe you more than words," he said. "Then start with the ones you've never said." The air felt tighter, but not hostile, more like honesty demanding oxygen. He held her gaze. "That night, you mattered." Sarai didn't blink. "You still do," he added. She let out a slow breath. "You had 3 years to say that." "I know, and you didn't. Not once. No message, no call. You didn't ask where I went. You didn't try." "I was afraid," he said. "Of what?" Her voice stayed low, but her stare sharpened. "Of me. Or of what that night made you feel." He didn't answer immediately. He wasn't ready to lie. "I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't plan for that kind of connection. I didn't expect it from you." "Because I was your junior analyst?" she asked. "No, because I never let anyone in, and you didn't ask to be let in. You just were." Her brows pulled slightly, but she didn't interrupt. He continued. "You were the one person in the firm who didn't need me to perform. You didn't care about my reputation or my last merger. You were just real, quiet, consistent. And then that night happened. I saw you, and I felt something I didn't know what to do with." She crossed her arms lightly, thoughtful. "You think that's new for me?" she said quietly. "You think I wasn't scared too? You think I didn't leave your office shaking inside, trying to figure out if I was just convenient or if it meant something?" Her voice caught slightly. "I resigned because silence told me everything your mouth didn't." Draven dropped his gaze. She went on. "I wasn't naive. I knew the risk. I knew we weren't anything official. But I also knew what I felt. And your silence was loud, Draven. I filled in all the blanks you left behind." He looked back up, face shadowed. "I regret that more than anything I've done in my career." Sarai didn't soften, but she didn't harden either. "I don't want your regret," she said. "I want to know if you're going to keep showing up. For him, not for me, for Elias." "I will," he said, without hesitation. "You say that now." "I say it because I've never seen myself more clearly than I did sitting next to him at that cafe." That made her pause. Her hands rested gently on the table now, fingers lightly touching the glass of water. "I watched you with him," she said. "He didn't know who you were, but he gave you space. He trusted you without needing proof. And that scares me." "Why?" "Because if you leave, again, he won't recover easily. He doesn't get attached to many people. He's cautious. But he liked you, and he doesn't even know why." Draven's throat tightened. "I won't leave him." "And what about me?" she asked, blunt. "Where do I fit in this to you now?" He blinked at the directness. "I didn't expect anything from you," she added, "but I need clarity. If you're here to patch over 3 years with occasional muffins and puzzles, then let me know now." "I'm not here to patch things," he said quietly. "I'm here because I'm not finished with what we started, because I never should have let you walk out of my life, and because I want to rebuild something that's not built on shame." She looked at him for a long time. "Do you love him?" she asked. "Yes," he said instantly. "Do you love me?" The question was harder, not because he didn't know, but because he did. "I never stopped," he said. Her breath caught. "But I never deserved to say it until I proved it. And I haven't proven it yet." Sarai's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. "Then show me." "I will," he promised. A beat passed. "I'm not angry anymore. she said softly. I just don't know how to believe you. You don't have to yet. She nodded. The check came. She reached for her purse. He placed his hand gently over the bill. I asked for this, he said. Let me cover it. She didn't fight him. As they stood, he opened the door for her. The night air was cool. She turned to him once more. He calls the puzzle pieces his little people, she said. Draven smiled faintly. That makes sense. He gave you the red one on purpose. It's the leader piece. It always goes last, after everyone else is safe. Draven's heart dropped just a little. She looked at him. He doesn't even know why he did that. But I do. And then, like before, she walked away. But this time, he stayed a little longer in the street, letting her words settle, and letting the weight of what he'd almost missed anchor him for good. Draven wasn't sure what to expect after that night. Sarai didn't message him. She didn't follow up or offer a next step. She simply left him standing there in the cold with her words still in the air. He gave you the red one on purpose. The leader piece. That stayed with him. It wasn't about color or puzzles. It was about how Elias had trusted him without knowing who he was. Trusted him enough to offer the most important part of the game. His last move, his favorite piece. He couldn't stop thinking about that. By Monday morning, Draven had already cleared his schedule for the next Saturday, and for the next 6 after that. It wasn't enough to say he would show up. He had to make space for it. He adjusted meetings, pushed back investor check-ins, and handed off 3 client calls to his deputy. It raised eyebrows, but he didn't explain. He didn't need to. Sarai was right. This wasn't about declarations. It was about consistency and showing up without being asked. When Saturday came, he returned to the cafe early again. Brought a new puzzle set this time, one with magnetic shapes that made 3D towers. Nothing flashy, just something thoughtful. Something that said, I remembered. Elias arrived with Sarai bounding in ahead of her, backpack bouncing. He grinned when he saw Draven. You came back, Elias said. Told you I would. Elias reached for the bag in Draven's hand. Is that for me? It is, he replied. You want to open it? Sarai watched silently as Elias ripped into the packaging and gasped. It's a rocket puzzle. You like space? Draven asked. I love it. One day I'm gonna go there. Draven smiled. Guess we better practice building rockets then. They sat at the same low table. Sarai took her usual tea and a seat near the window, but she wasn't watching them like before. She was present, but more at ease. Elias took the lead this time, laying out the puzzle pieces, explaining what each one did, how. The blue triangle was the oxygen stabilizer, and how the silver base was the gravity lock. It made no actual sense, but to Elias, it was science. Draven let him guide, let him lead. Sarai occasionally glanced over, but didn't step in. You're getting better, Elias said seriously, mid-puzzle. Draven chuckled. You think I'm passing the test? Elias shrugged. You're not bad. That felt like a win. After an hour, Sarai stood and gathered her things. We've got a library stop after this. Elias stood too, backpack in hand. Draven bent down. Same time next week? Elias nodded. But you bring the muffin this time. Draven grinned. Deal. Sarai lingered behind as Elias bounded ahead. He's opening up, she said softly. I noticed he never runs toward people. Draven's face turned serious. I won't disappear. She looked at him carefully. Then keep showing up. He doesn't need promises. He needs patterns. He nodded. And what about you? He asked quietly. What about me? Do you need anything? She blinked, surprised by the question. Her voice came lower. I don't know how to need you. I'm not asking you to, he said. I'm asking if you want me to be there. Even if it's not romantic. Even if it's just steady. Her lips parted, unsure. He added, You don't owe me space in your life. But if there's room, I'd like to earn it. She nodded slowly, then turned toward the door. At the threshold, she looked back. You showing up for him. That's you showing up for me too. Then, she left. Draven didn't move for a moment. The puzzle sat half-built on the table. He folded the remaining pieces back into the box and tucked it under his arm. He didn't smile, but he felt something different. Not guilt, not fear, not even hope yet. Just purpose. It was unfamiliar, but it was real. Later that week, Draven found himself standing in front of a store he hadn't entered in years. A small independent bookstore in Chelsea, the kind Sarai used to talk about in passing back when they worked together. She mentioned it once, said it was her quiet place when she couldn't afford noise. He walked in and scanned the shelves. Children's section, non-fiction, parenting. He didn't know what he was looking for until his hands stopped on a small, hardcover book with soft watercolor illustrations on the cover. The Day You Became Mine. He opened it and read the first few lines. I didn't know the shape of you. I didn't hear your laugh. But something inside me shifted. The moment I knew you'd always exist. He bought 2 copies, one for Elias and one for himself, not to read to him now, but to remind himself that every presence had a beginning, even one that came years late. That night, he sat on his couch, flipping through the pages. When he got to the end, there was a space left blank. This book belongs to... He stared at the line for a while, then wrote, Elias Lang. And under that, he signed, from someone who's still learning what it means to be yours. Draven hadn't expected much from the next Saturday. He showed up because that's what he promised. No grand plan, no carefully rehearsed lines. Just a man carrying a bag with a muffin, a puzzle set, and a book tucked carefully beneath the flap. When he reached the cafe, Elias was already there, legs swinging under. The table, a sticker on his shirt that read, Junior Engineer. He looked up, spotted Draven, and pointed to the empty chair beside him. You're late, Elias said, even though Draven was 5 minutes early. Draven smiled and held up a small paper bag. I brought backup. Elias grabbed the muffin and peeked inside. It's the same kind. Good. I don't like experiments. Sarai looked up from her spot near the window. She didn't speak, just offered a subtle nod. She had a different book today, a thicker one, with notes sticking out of the sides. Draven took his seat. Elias already had pieces of the new puzzle laid out. This one's a spaceship that turns into a robot. Impressive, Draven said. We didn't have toys like this when I was your age. Elias narrowed his eyes. Curious. How old are you? Draven chuckled. Old enough to remember when phones had cords. Elias gasped. No way. Way. That's sad, Elias said with sympathy. Were there dragons too? Draven leaned in. Only on Tuesdays. Elias laughed, a high-pitched, honest sound. It reached Sarai's ears. She looked up, and for the first time in weeks, Draven saw her smile fully, not politely, not guarded, just soft, warm, present. They built the robot for an hour. Elias was focused, bossy, brilliant. Every time Draven tried to skip a step, Elias called him out. No cheating. Robots deserve patience. Draven didn't argue. When they finished, Elias placed it proudly in the center of the table, arms raised like a champion. Draven opened his bag, pulled out the hardcover book. What's that? Elias asked. It's for you. Elias took it, flipped to the first page. His fingers ran over the words. He got to the end and saw the name written in thick, careful letters. Elias Lang. He looked up, slowly. Why does it say Lang? Draven swallowed. Sarai set her book down. She didn't intervene. That's my last name too, Draven said, voice low. I was hoping. Maybe one day you'd want to share it. Elias blinked. Sarai stood and walked over. She knelt beside Elias, one hand resting on his small back. Eli, she said gently, this is the part we didn't talk about yet. Elias looked from her to Draven. Are you my dad? He asked. Draven didn't rush the answer. He nodded slowly. Yes, I am. Elias didn't move. His face didn't shift. He looked back down at the book, then turned the page and pointed to the next line. Can you read it? Draven hesitated. Sarai stood up and returned to her seat, but not far. Her eyes didn't leave them. Draven cleared his throat. I didn't know the shape of you. I didn't hear your laugh. But something inside me shifted. The moment I knew you'd always exist. Elias listened. He didn't interrupt. Draven kept reading, each line steadier than the last. By the time he reached the end, Elias was leaning against the table, hands folded under his chin. When he closed the book, Elias whispered, "You sound like the guy in the movie that saves people." Draven smiled. "I've saved companies, people I'm still working on." Elias nodded once, satisfied. Okay. Yeah. He pointed to the robot. "Now you're part of the crew." Draven blinked. "The crew? Yeah. Me, Mom, and now you. You can be the red piece." "It goes last, but it's the most important." Sarai exhaled audibly. Draven didn't look away from Elias. "I'd like that." They played a little longer, now in a rhythm they hadn't shared before. It wasn't playful anymore. It was familiar, like something was taking shape in real time. Sarai rose, walked over, and picked up Elias's coat. "We should go." Elias didn't argue. Draven stood too. Sarai looked at him directly. "That wasn't the plan. I didn't know the timing was right." He asked, "And you answered right," she said quietly. They stood in silence as Elias zipped his coat. "I don't know how to do all of this yet," Draven admitted. "You're not expected to know," she replied. "You're expected to stay." Elias held his puzzle box like a trophy. "Same time next week?" he asked. Draven crouched down. "Yes." "And after that?" "Yes." "Forever?" Draven's throat closed. Sarai stepped closer. "We'll take it one Saturday at a time," she said softly. Elias nodded. "That works." And somehow, for Draven Lang, the man who had mapped entire empires and managed billions, with calculated risk, that promise was the most meaningful one he'd ever made. One Saturday at a time. Draven couldn't stop thinking about what Elias had asked. Forever. He had handled international negotiations that stretched over 14 months. Fought litigation wars that outlasted entire fiscal years. But no deal, no court ruling, no billion-dollar acquisition had ever made his chest tighten the way that one word did. Forever. The way Elias asked it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't poetic. It was a child's quiet question wrapped in years of not knowing. Draven had once told a boardroom full of alpha investors that he didn't believe in permanence, only performance. The room applauded. Now he was staring down the weight of a boy who didn't need his applause. He needed his presence. All week, Draven adjusted his life again. Not out of panic, not out of desperation, but with intention. He stopped responding to emails after 9 p.m. He stepped back from a deal that would have locked him in Berlin for 6 weeks. He told his assistant, "If it's not local, it waits." The old version of him would have called that a loss. But now he was learning how to win differently. By Thursday he had called a private child therapist, not for Elias but for himself. He needed to understand how to enter a child's life at year 3, not day 1. How to build trust without expectations. How to navigate parenting without ownership. It wasn't a media move. It wasn't a PR stunt. It was accountability. That Saturday, he arrived at the cafe again. Same time, same seat. This time, he didn't bring a toy. He brought a coloring book Elias had mentioned during their last visit. One with spaceships and planets and glow-in-the-dark stickers. Elias spotted him through the window before entering. He smiled, small but sure, and ran to the table. "You remembered." Draven handed him the book. "I told you I listen." Elias climbed into the seat and pulled out a fresh pack of markers. Sarai entered behind him. Today she wore a dark green sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back loosely. She didn't speak right away, just set her bag down, scanned the room like she always did, and slid into her usual seat. "Hi," Draven said. "Morning." He waited until Elias was fully focused on the book before speaking again. "I've been reading." Sarai looked up. "About how to..." show up better. As a parent, he clarified. Therapy books? She asked. Actual therapy, he replied. That surprised her. Her expression shifted slightly. You're seeing someone. I needed someone who wouldn't flatter me. Someone who'd call out what I didn't learn when I was supposed to. She sipped her tea. Good. He looked at Elias, tongue sticking out as he concentrated on coloring the moon green. I want to give him something solid, not reactive, not shaped by guilt. Sarai's voice softened. You're doing more than I expected. I want to do what he needs. She paused. He doesn't know how to need a father. Yet. Draven nodded. Then, I'll wait. A small smile tugged at her lips. Your patience looks different than I remember. It feels different too. They sat in silence, the kind that wasn't heavy anymore. It had shifted, like the balance had changed. There was still distance, but it wasn't lined with anger. Just history. Elias broke the quiet with a question. Can we go somewhere else next time? Draven glanced at Sarai. She looked at Elias. Where would you want to go? Elias shrugged. The museum, maybe? The one with the dinosaur that's too big for the room? Draven leaned in. Natural History Museum? Elias nodded enthusiastically. The one with the creepy glowing fish? Draven grinned. We'll go. I'll bring the muffins. Sarai hesitated, then nodded. We can do that. Elias pumped a fist. Yes. Later, as they stepped outside, Elias walked ahead. He stopped by a tree and started pulling at a leaf. Sarai stood beside Draven, arms crossed loosely. He likes you. I'm glad, but he doesn't trust Easy. I know. He's still figuring out what you mean. Draven nodded. So am I. She looked over at him, studying his face. Are you doing this for you? No, he said. I'm doing this because I should have 3 years ago, and because he matters. You both do. Her lips pressed together. She looked away. You say that easily now. It's not easy, he said. But it's true. Elias ran back toward them, waving a brown leaf. Look, it has holes, but it's still pretty. Draven crouched. Like people. Elias tilted his head. What? Sometimes we have pieces missing, but we still matter. Elias nodded slowly. Like my robot when it lost an arm. I just gave it a sword. Sarai laughed, fully this time. The sound startled even her. Draven smiled. Not because he had said something clever, but because he had said something real. As they walked back toward the train station, Elias between them, Draven felt something shift inside him again. No headlines, no audience, no drama. Just a woman who had held it all together, and a boy who held their future in one hand. At the station entrance, Sarai paused. We'll meet at the museum next week. You good with that? I'll be early, Draven said. She nodded. Elias pulled out the red puzzle piece from his pocket. He handed it to Draven. You forgot this last time. Draven took it carefully. Thanks. Don't lose it, Elias said seriously. It's the one that holds everything together. Draven's hand closed around it. I won't. As Sarai and Elias walked down into the subway, Draven stayed at the top of the stairs a moment longer. Watching, learning, and finally, leading from behind. The 49th floor hadn't changed. Same brushed steel elevator. Same frosted glass doors with Lang & Rowe etched clean across the front. Same wall of windows that stretched wide across Midtown Manhattan, giving a panoramic view of the city Draven once thought he'd conquered, only now it felt different. Draven stood inside his office, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the skyline. The city pulsed below like it always had, but he wasn't looking at the lights. He was looking at the reflection in the glass. Behind him stood Sarai. She hadn't been in this space since the night she left, and she hadn't walked in lightly now. Her steps were careful, but not hesitant. She was here for a client strategy session, invited by Lang & Rowe's health sector lead, not by Draven. The coincidence had startled him when the calendar update hit his inbox. But instead of moving the meeting, he had let it stand. And when it ended, he asked her to stay behind. She could have refused, but she didn't. Now she stood near the doorway, arms crossed loosely, waiting. He turned. "It's strange seeing you here," he said. She tilted her head. "It's strange being here. I thought you'd never walk back into this office." "I didn't plan to," she replied, "but I go where the work takes me." He gestured toward the chair across from his desk. "You want to sit?" She looked at it, then walked past it, and stood at the window instead. "I remember standing here the night everything changed," she said. Draven joined her, a respectful step back. "It was past 11. You were still in that navy shirt. I was still trying to figure out if I was imagining what I felt." "You weren't," he said quietly. She nodded, but her eyes didn't shift from the skyline. "You said nothing after that night. Nothing." And the silence, Draven, it spoke louder than anything you could have said. "I know. Do you?" she asked, finally turning to face him. "Do you know what it feels like to give someone a moment of real vulnerability and get nothing back?" He didn't answer right away. "I wasn't raised to respond to emotion," he said. "I was raised to push through it, bury it, win around it. And look where that got you," she said, not cruelly, but firmly. "I lost time," he replied. "With you, with Elias." Her jaw tensed. "You didn't just lose time. You lost trust. And you don't get that back just by being sorry." "I know," he repeated. Silence stretched between them. Then he added, "I've been reading those parenting books, showing up to every Saturday, listening when he talks, remembering his words. I'm doing everything I know how to do." She looked at him long and hard. "And when it's not enough, I keep doing it anyway." Something shifted in her face, not softening, but a quiet release, like tension uncoiling behind her ribs. "Do you remember what you said to me the night before I resigned?" she asked. Draven's brow creased. "I didn't say anything." "Exactly." She let that land. "I wanted you to say something," she said. "Anything. Even just to ask if I was okay. I walked past your office and waited 5 seconds, hoping you'd call my name." He exhaled slowly. "I was watching you the whole time," he admitted. "But I didn't know how to ask you to stay without breaking the distance I thought I needed." She looked away. "Well, distance was what you got." They stood in silence again, this time facing the glass, the city below them glowing like it always did. He turned to her again. "I want to try something." She raised an eyebrow. "What?" He walked to his cabinet, pulled out a box, opened it, and took out a slim sketch pad. Inside were prints, copies of Elias's drawings, the ones he made at the cafe, the rocket, the robot, the coloring page with the green moon. "You kept these?" she asked. "I scanned every one he gave me." He handed them to her slowly, page by page. Sarai held the last one, a messy picture of 3 stick figures, one tall, one with curly hair, one small with a red circle above his head. "That's us," she said softly. He nodded. "He drew this last week," Draven said. "And he said, 'This is me, Mummy, and the red one. He's the strongest. He holds the ground up.'" Her hand trembled slightly. Draven looked at her gently. "He sees me as part of his world, not because I told him I'm his father, but because I've been there, quietly. Every Saturday." Sarai closed the pad. "Kids are honest," she said. "They are," he agreed. "And so should we be." He took a breath. "Okay." She turned to him, this time fully. "I've been holding you at arm's length for a reason, not out of spite, but to see if your presence could survive without permission." He nodded. "I understand." She studied him. "You passed," she said softly. His eyes searched hers. "I'm not asking for anything back," he said. "I'm just glad you said that." She stepped a little closer. "I'm not ready for you to be in my life again the way you were before," she said. "But I'm open to something new, if you're willing to build it slow." "I am." Sarai looked around the office. Her eyes swept across the furniture, the view, the history etched into every corner. "I don't belong here anymore," she said quietly. "You always did," he replied. She smiled, small, sad, true. I'm not her anymore, she said. That girl who waited in silence. I'm a mother now. I'm tired, strong, clear. I see you, he said, and I still respect you. She nodded once. Then let's keep going. And with that, she picked up the drawing, placed it gently back into the pad, and handed it to him. I think he wants you to have this one. Draven held the pad in his hands like it was something sacred. He's already given me more than I ever thought I deserved. Sarai walked to the door. At the frame, she turned. Don't waste this. I won't. And she was gone. Draven stayed at the window, holding the sketch pad, watching the lights blur across the glass. This wasn't a second chance. This was something deeper. A quiet beginning with no guarantees, only presence, and presence was everything. The next time Draven saw Sarai wasn't at the cafe. It wasn't on a weekend, and it wasn't planned. It was Thursday evening. The sky was bruising into night, and he had just stepped out of a downtown investor mixer he barely spoke at. He was halfway to his car when he noticed a familiar figure sitting alone on a park bench just off the main road. He almost didn't believe it was her. No Elias, no agenda, just Sarai. Coat pulled around her, a coffee cup beside her, and her face turned up toward the last glow of sun between the buildings. He didn't want to disturb her, but his feet moved on instinct. She didn't look surprised when he approached, didn't tense. She just glanced sideways and said, "You ever sit in a city this loud and still hear yourself think?" "Not until now," he replied. She smiled faintly. "Sit. I won't bite." He did. For a while, neither of them spoke. The traffic behind them kept moving. Somewhere down the block, a saxophone player was playing something soft and slow. It felt like background music to a moment neither of them planned, but both needed. "I come here when I need quiet," she said. "You always were better at finding that than me." I didn't have a choice. I had to learn how to be still, especially when he was small. Draven nodded. Was it hard, the early years? Sarai's gaze stayed on the skyline. Yes, and no. I didn't have time to fall apart. He didn't come into the world with instructions, but he came with a softness that made me try harder, even when I was exhausted, even when I was angry. At me? She turned then. Not just you, at myself too. For trusting what I never confirmed, for hoping you'd do something when you did nothing. Draven lowered his eyes. "I think about that a lot. I don't need you to sit in guilt," she said. "I need you to stand in accountability." He looked at her. "That's exactly what I'm trying to do." She studied his face. It wasn't a look of accusation. It was something more searching. "I think you are," she said eventually. "And that scares me." "Why?" "Because part of me still wants to protect myself from you." The admission landed softly, but it cut all the same. Draven nodded. "You're allowed to." She went quiet again. Then, finally, she said, "Elias told me last night he wants to show you his drawings. I'd like that. He said he wants to draw the three of us next." Draven's breath caught in his throat. "I didn't ask him to," she continued. "He came up with that on his own. Do you know what he meant?" Sarai turned her cup slowly in her hands. "I think he's trying to build a picture of what his world looks like with you in it. One Saturday at a time." Draven looked straight ahead. "I won't let him down." "You might," she said, not unkindly. "One day you might miss something, forget something, say something wrong. But the point is not never failing. The point is being there when it matters." He nodded. "I understand." She leaned back against the bench. "I don't know if I'll ever feel ready to forgive what I went through alone, but I'm realizing that doesn't have to be the reason I stay distant." He turned toward her. "Then what would be the reason you'd come closer?" She thought for a long time. "If I start to believe you're staying for good, and not just until it gets hard again." Her voice was steady, honest, tired. "I'm not going anywhere," he said quietly. The streetlights blinked on around them. A light breeze picked up, catching a few early leaves and sending them tumbling across the sidewalk. They both looked up at the same moment. Above them, the buildings stood tall, still lit from the inside, offices that hadn't yet shut down for the night. Lives still moving. Draven reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I brought something." Sarai glanced over as he unfolded it and handed it to her. It was a printout of Elias's sketch, the stick figure drawing with a red circle over the smallest one's head. "I framed the original," he said, "but I kept a copy. I carry it with me now." Sarai's fingers smoothed the page. "Why?" "Because when things get loud, when my instincts start pushing me to go numb again, I need to remember what I'm actually doing this for." She looked at him. "That little red circle?" He nodded. "That's the center of it all." She didn't speak. She just folded the paper carefully, then handed it back. And when their fingers brushed for a second too long, neither of them pulled away immediately. They sat like that, side by side, a quiet hum building between them. Not romance, not yet, but understanding, and the beginning of something else. When she finally stood, she didn't walk away immediately. "I'm taking him to the museum Saturday," she said. "He wants you to come." "I'll be there." She started to turn, then hesitated again. "Draven." "Yeah?" She paused. "I see the effort, even when I don't say it." He nodded, steady. "I don't need you to say it. I just need you to feel it's real." She gave him a look, one filled with everything she hadn't said since that night 3 years ago. Then she turned and walked into the crowd. This time, he didn't stay frozen behind her. He walked too, but now he walked with direction, towards something that finally made sense. The museum was loud in the way children's places always are, voices echoing, footsteps bouncing off the marble floors. Small shoes slapping excitedly down hallways as families rushed toward the towering skeletons and glowing exhibits. Draven stood near the entrance of the dinosaur wing, looking slightly out of place in his casual button-up and dark jeans. He had dressed for comfort, not optics. No suit, no tie. He wasn't here for a photo op. He was here for Elias, and Elias came sprinting toward him like the world had been waiting for it. "There you are." Elias beamed, curls bouncing, hand tightly gripping a folded museum map. "We're starting at the big teeth first." Sarai followed behind, hands in her pockets, a quiet smile playing on her lips. She wore sneakers and a soft zip-up hoodie, her hair in a loose puff tied with a navy scarf. Draven crouched. "Big teeth." Elias held the map up with both hands. "T-Rex." "Look." Draven leaned in. "Lead the way, Commander." They walked together through the towering displays. Elias had endless energy, racing between exhibits, reading out loud, correcting Draven on names and dates as if he had memorized the entire layout of the place. "That's a Triceratops, not a Stegosaurus," Elias declared as they passed a display. Draven raised both hands, noted. Sarai walked a few steps behind them, giving them space, but not separating. Her presence was like a steady current, unseen but constant. At the fossil interactive table, Elias tugged on Draven's sleeve. "Help me brush the bones." They both knelt, tiny brushes in hand, sweeping grainy sand off of a replica fossil as museum staff watched nearby. "You're better at this than I am," Draven said. "That's because I've done this 4 times." Elias whispered. "Mom says I'm a professional now." "She's right," Draven replied. They finished brushing and moved to the next exhibit, deep sea creatures with glow-in-the-dark lighting. Elias pressed his hands to the glass as the strange glowing fish floated under black light. "They look like monsters," he said. Draven stood beside him. "Even monsters can be beautiful in the right light." Sarai turned to look at him. She didn't speak, but her eyes lingered longer than they needed to. After an hour, Elias got quiet. Not sad, just slower. He leaned against Draven's side as they stood in front of a massive, woolly mammoth statue. "Your legs okay?" Draven asked. "Yeah," Elias mumbled. "I'm just charging." Draven looked down. "You want to sit?" "No, I like standing next to you." The words landed like a weight in Draven's chest, soft but powerful. Sarai heard it too. She glanced over but didn't say anything. Later, They made their way to the rooftop cafe. The sun was setting, casting a soft gold light across the city. They took a corner table, Elias sipping apple juice while working on a coloring sheet with a broken crayon he insisted still worked just fine. Sarai sipped her tea, quiet. Draven cleared his throat. "Thank you," he said to her. She looked up. "For what?" "For letting today happen." Her fingers toyed with the cup sleeve. "He asked for it." "I know, but you made it possible." She paused, then said softly, "You've changed, Draven. Not overnight, but it's there." He didn't respond immediately. Then, "I'm trying not to measure myself by what I missed, only by what I build now. That's the only way forward," she said. Elias held up his page. "Look. I colored the sky red." Draven grinned. "That's bold. It's sunset, like right now." Sarai leaned over. "That's beautiful, Eli. Can we keep it?" he asked, handing it to Draven. Draven took it carefully. "I'll frame this." "You don't have to," Sarai said quickly. "I want to," he replied. Elias smiled, satisfied. After their meal, they exited onto the museum steps. The city had dimmed to evening. Cars crawled past. People laughed in groups heading to dinner. Elias was beginning to fade. His energy dipped, and he leaned into Sarai's side, hand gripping her wrist. "I'm sleepy." She touched his cheek. "You've had a full day." Draven looked at them both. "I can get you a car. You shouldn't take the train when he's tired." Sarai hesitated. "It's not charity," he said. "It's care." She nodded once. "Okay." When the car pulled up, Draven opened the back door. Elias climbed in, yawning dramatically. As Sarai moved to follow, she paused. "You know he's going to ask if you're coming with us." Draven nodded. "I know." She searched his eyes. "You're not." "Not tonight." She exhaled. "Good." He smiled faintly. "Next week." "Next week," she said. She got in. The door closed. The car pulled off. Draven stood there for a long time afterward, holding the Red Sky drawing in one hand. A page that shouldn't mean much. But somehow it felt like the start of a new chapter in the story he was finally showing up for. The following week, Sarai didn't bring Elias to the cafe. At first, Draven thought they might just be late. He checked his watch. Then, the door. Then again. 30 minutes passed. He didn't leave. He sat in the usual spot, a blueberry muffin untouched in a bag, Elias's name scribbled on the outside in his own handwriting. The robot coloring book lay beside it. He had brought a new pack of crayons too. Even remembered the green shade Elias liked calling alien grass. Still, no one came. The server checked in. Draven waved her off politely. Then he opened the book. He colored a rocket with crooked strokes. He wasn't good at it. His shading was uneven. He didn't care. At 10:22, his phone buzzed. "Sarai, we couldn't make it today. He had a bad night. Not sick, just heavy. He misses things before he understands why." Draven read the message 3 times. He typed a reply. "Draven, tell him I was here. I brought the same muffin." Saved his seat. No reply came, and he didn't expect one. But he stayed. An hour. Then 2. Then he folded the page he'd colored, slipped it into the book, wrote Elias's name on the top with a black marker and underlined it twice. When he stood to leave, he told the staff he'd see them next Saturday. They smiled. They had noticed. At home, he left the muffin on the counter, couldn't throw it away. That night, he paced, not with anger, not even frustration, but with something unfamiliar. Worry. He didn't worry often. Didn't let himself. But now he worried about a little boy who saw the world in puzzle pieces and drawn skies, and about the woman who had carried it all for years without backup. At 11:07 p.m., his phone buzzed again. "Sarai. He asked if you colored without him." I told him, yes. He smiled a little. Then he said to ask if you stayed in our spot. Draven replied instantly. "Draven." I did. I saved his seat. No response came after that, but he didn't need one. The next Saturday they came back. Elias ran in like he hadn't missed a beat. He climbed into the booth and pulled out the coloring book before saying a word. "You colored my rocket without me," he said. Draven smiled. "I left the windows blank so you could draw who's inside." Elias nodded seriously. "Good save." Sarai came in slower, dark circles under her eyes. She sat without her usual alert posture. Her body looked tired, even if her spirit held firm. Draven leaned in gently. "Was it a bad week?" She nodded. He started asking questions at night, about families, about fathers, and why some people stay. Draven's throat tightened. "Did he ask about me?" "Yes, but he didn't ask if you were his dad. He asked if you'd keep coming." Draven blinked away the heat in his eyes. "What did you say?" "I said, you'll see." He looked at her. "Is that still your answer?" She hesitated, then nodded. "For now." Elias interrupted them, waving his crayon. "Mom, can you help me spell galaxy?" Draven reached for the pen. "Let me." They wrote it together, each letter careful, slow, Elias mouthing the spelling under his breath. After a while, Sarai stood and went to the counter for another tea. Elias leaned in close. "She cries sometimes at night." Draven didn't flinch. "Does she tell you why?" "No, she just says she's tired. But I think she misses something." Draven nodded slowly. "She's been strong for a long time." Elias colored quietly for a moment. Then he whispered, "You should stay more." "I want to," Draven replied. Elias looked at him. "Then do it." The simplicity shattered Draven more than any confrontation ever had. He nodded. "I will." When Sarai returned, Elias announced, "He's staying more." Sarai paused. "Is that right?" Draven looked at her. "Only if I'm welcome." She studied him. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you understand what staying means." "I'm learning," he said. "You better keep learning," Elias added with a grin. Later, as they prepared to leave, Draven offered to walk them to the station. Sarai didn't say no. Elias skipped ahead, arms spread wide like airplane wings. Sarai walked beside Draven, quietly. "He's testing you," she said. "I figured, and me too," she added. "Every day, he's watching how we move, if we're safe." Draven looked at her. "And, are we?" Sarai's voice dropped. "I think we're getting there." At the entrance to the station, Elias turned back and said, "Don't forget the red piece." Draven smiled. "It's in my pocket." Elias nodded. "Good. It holds the rest together." Sarai looked over at Draven. "We'll see you next week." He didn't hesitate. "Every one you'll have me for." She nodded. And for the first time, she didn't look away when he said it. The question came on a Wednesday night, quiet and uninvited. They were sitting in Sarai's small living room, Draven, Elias, and her, all scattered across the couch and floor. A thunderstorm had knocked out their internet an hour earlier, and Elias had declared that game night must go on, rain or not. Now, they were halfway through a puzzle on the rug. Elias was arranging corner pieces, Sarai sorting edge ones, and Draven, surprisingly, was focused on the middle. The room was lit only by warm lamps and candlelight. Elias's favorite jazz playlist buzzed softly through her old speaker. He didn't ask for cartoons, didn't whine about his tablet dying. Instead, he asked, "Draven, are you going to leave again?" The question came without malice. Just wonder, worry, maybe, but no fear. Sarai froze. Her fingers halted on a blue and white edge piece. Draven looked up slowly. "No," he said, his voice steady. Elias looked down at the puzzle. "Because I used to think maybe you forgot about us." Sarai's eyes closed for a second. Draven leaned in. "I didn't forget you. I just didn't know what I was losing until I saw you again." Elias blinked. "That's sad." "It is," Draven agreed. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Elias nodded slowly. Then, without another word, he stood, walked to his backpack by the wall, and returned with the red puzzle piece in his palm. He handed it to Draven. "You can keep it now," Draven didn't speak. He just held it, chest full of more than he could ever say. Sarai stood quietly and walked into the kitchen, not to escape, but to breathe. She hadn't expected Draven to be so consistent. 3 months now, every Saturday. And now, weeknights too. He didn't hover, didn't try to prove himself every second. He was simply present, helping with homework, taking Elias to the park, bringing groceries when he came over. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. They just existed in the same space, quietly, like that was enough. And in many ways, it was. But tonight, something had shifted. That question, "Are you going to leave again?" It wasn't just Elias asking it. Sarai had asked it too, in her own way, in her silence, in the way she always waited for the other shoe to drop. In the past, people had always dropped the ball, sometimes gently, sometimes without even noticing. But Draven, he kept catching it, every week, every day. Tonight, as she stood at the kitchen sink staring out at the wet fire escape, she heard footsteps approach behind her. "Hey," he said. She turned. His face was soft in the low light. No tie, no polished armor, just him. "Is he asleep?" she asked. He nodded. "Out cold. I didn't even finish reading the story." She smiled. "He's been doing that lately. He says it's because your voice is calm like the ocean." Draven chuckled. High praise. Her eyes dropped to the counter, where a half-cut lemon sat beside her tea mug. "I heard what he asked. I figured," he said. "I didn't plan for him to ask it. I'm glad he did." "Why?" "Because it gave me the chance to say what I should have said a long time ago." She exhaled. "He believes you. I want you to believe me too." She met his eyes. "I want to," she whispered. Draven stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough that the space between them wasn't about fear anymore. "You don't have to rush," he said. "I'm not here to rewrite what happened, just to write what comes next." Sarai swallowed hard. "Sometimes I still feel the weight of that night, not because of what we did, but because of what came after." "I feel it too," he admitted. "But it brought him into the world, and now, maybe it can bring us back to each other." She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped forward and rested her forehead against his chest. His arms stayed at his sides for a second, then slowly wrapped around her. Not tightly, not urgently, just there. Her voice was muffled. "You weren't gentle then, but you are now." "I didn't know how to be. But I've learned." She stayed there for a long moment, then pulled back slightly. Her eyes were clear, tired, but open. "I don't know what this is yet. We don't have to name it," he said. "We just need to keep building it." She nodded. He leaned down and kissed her forehead. Slow, safe, present, and when she leaned into it instead of pulling away, he knew. The door was no longer locked. The first time Draven stayed past 10 p.m., Sarai didn't say a word. She didn't ask him to go. She didn't drop hints or move around like a woman trying to clear her space. She just let him be there. Elias had fallen asleep on the couch after demanding just 5 more minutes of a dinosaur documentary. His small frame curled against a throw pillow, fists relaxed, breath deep. Draven had watched him drift off, gently lifting him and carrying him to his room without hesitation. Elias barely stirred when tucked into bed. That alone, being trusted with that simple, sacred moment, meant more to Draven than any title he'd ever earned. When he returned to the living room, Sarai was in the kitchen again. She'd changed into a loose t-shirt and soft pants, hair wrapped high on her head. She looked comfortable, bare, still strong. "I can go," Draven offered. She shook her head, back still to him, as she stirred honey into her tea. "I didn't say you had to." He leaned against the counter. They stood like that for a moment, 2 people who once only existed in boardrooms, now speaking in quiet kitchen silences. Sarai sipped her tea, then glanced at him. "Do you want tea?" "Sure," he said. She grabbed another mug, poured water, dropped a bag in, then handed it to him. "Still 2 sugars?" she asked. He blinked. "You remember that?" "I remember everything from that night." She didn't say it with bitterness, just truth. They sat on the couch, Elias's blanket still folded over the armrest. Sarai pulled her knees up beneath her and tucked her fingers around the warm mug. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been if we just talked?" she asked. "Every day, I used to imagine what would have happened if you'd come after me," she said. "If you'd called, sent one message, shown up at my door. I thought about it every day for a week, then I buried it under work." "Buried you?" Her lips twitched, not in humor, in recognition. "You were good at that," she said. "I'm trying not to be anymore." She nodded slowly. "I see that." Draven watched her profile in the soft light. She looked like she belonged here, like the woman he had met 3 years ago had evolved into someone stronger, someone who'd raised a son on love and structure while carrying the weight of absence. "I never told you thank you," he said. "For what?" "For doing everything alone. For being strong enough for both of us when I disappeared." She looked over at him. "I didn't have a choice, I know, but you still did it, and you did it beautifully." She didn't respond right away. Instead, she reached down and pulled the red puzzle piece from under the lamp. It had been sitting there for weeks, a permanent fixture now. She turned it over in her hand. "Do you know why he gave you this?" He said, "I was the one who held everything together." She shook her head gently. "No, that's what you said." He didn't say that. "He gave you the red piece because it's the one he always saves for last." Draven frowned. "Why last?" "Because in his mind, the red piece makes the picture whole." Draven's breath caught. Sarai looked up. "He didn't give it to you because you're strong. He gave it to you because he wants to believe you're permanent." He swallowed hard. "I want to be." "Then keep doing what you're doing," she said. "Don't rush us. Don't push past what's fragile. Just stay." "I will." She leaned back against the couch, resting her head for a moment. He took a sip of his tea. The room went quiet again, but not with tension, just calm. Then, softly, Sarai said, "You can stay tonight, if you want." Draven didn't move. "I'll take the couch," he said. "I know." She stood and walked toward her bedroom, pausing at the doorway. Her eyes met his. There was no seduction in them, no performance, just vulnerability. "I'm not ready for everything," she whispered. "But I trust you in my space now." He nodded. "That's more than enough." She disappeared down the hall. Draven stood, folded the blanket, placed it over the couch, then turned off the light. As he laid down that night, in the quiet of Sarai's home, under her roof, with Elias asleep in the next room, he didn't feel like an intruder. He felt like part of something that had been waiting for him to earn his place. And for the first time in his life, he didn't feel alone. Draven started showing up without being asked. Not with grand gestures, no lavish gifts, just presence. He showed up early on Monday mornings and walked Elias to school, while Sarai caught a few extra minutes of quiet. On Thursdays, he brought dinner, nothing extravagant, just things Elias would eat and Sarai didn't have to think about. He started leaving a pair of shoes by the door. His charger stayed plugged into the outlet by the couch. His cologne lingered on the hallway air. He didn't try to take over. He just made room for them and let them make room for him. One morning, as Sarai pulled a laundry basket out of the hallway closet, she noticed a new pack of Elias's favorite socks sitting right on top, bought in the right size, same characters, same color. She hadn't mentioned he was out. She hadn't needed to. Draven had noticed. And he had acted. That small thing cracked something open in her. Later that day, as Elias played in the yard, she sat on the porch while Draven swept leaves from the walkway. "You always do things like that?" she asked. He paused, leaned on the broom. "Like what?" "Notice things. Handle them quietly." "I try." "Why?" He shrugged. "Because the loudest men I know are the ones trying to prove they care. The quiet ones show it." Sarai watched him for a moment. "That wasn't you before." "No, it wasn't. And now I know what losing feels like, and I'm not risking it again." She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The silence between them was no longer uncomfortable. It was safe. Later that evening, as Elias bathed and the house filled with soft lavender steam, Draven stood at the kitchen counter, rolling up his sleeves and cutting vegetables. "You don't have to cook," Sarai said as she came in. "I know." He kept slicing. "You're just here, like it's your place too." He paused. "I'm not assuming anything. I know it's not mine yet." She leaned against the counter across from him. "It's not about assumption, it's about effort." He looked up. "You're not trying to be impressive anymore," she said. "You're just being consistent. That's all I ever should have been." They stared at each other. There was something different in her eyes now, something softer, something tired of holding him at arm's length. She walked over and took a piece of pepper from the board, popped it in her mouth. Then she reached behind him and grabbed a bowl from the cabinet, brushing past him gently. Her shoulder touched his. Briefly, deliberately. Draven stood still. "You good?" she asked, back still to him as she rinsed the bowl. He smiled. "I'm good." That night, after dinner and bedtime stories, and another round of Elias asking a million questions about clouds and turtles, Sarai found herself on the couch beside Draven, legs curled under her, blanket pulled over them both. The TV was on, but neither of them watched it. Draven glanced at her. "You look tired." "I'm always tired," she said with a light laugh. "Being a mom does that." He studied her. "I can take some of that weight," he said quietly. "I know you want to. I need you to let me." Sarai looked at him. She didn't speak for a while. "Then do you still have nightmares?" He blinked. "Sometimes, from your childhood. Mostly from what I became trying to forget it." She nodded. "Same." Draven turned toward her. "Tell me one." She hesitated. "No one's ever asked me that before. I'm not everyone." She studied him. Finally she said, "In my dreams, I'm standing in a hallway full of doors, and every one I open leads to a version of me that didn't survive." Draven didn't flinch. "I walk past them, all of them. But sometimes I wonder, which one was the real me?" He reached out and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "This one," he said. "The one who still opens doors." Her eyes shimmered. She didn't cry, but something released. She leaned her head against his shoulder. For a long time, they just sat there, and when he finally stood to leave, she stood with him. At the door, he paused. "Tomorrow?" "Yes," she said. "Same time." He nodded, turned, and left. And this time, she missed him the moment the door closed. The next evening, Sarai stood at her window longer than usual. She wasn't waiting. At least, that's what she told herself. But when she saw Draven's car pull up, the breath she didn't know she'd been holding eased out of her chest. She checked the stove. The rice was simmering. The chicken was already marinated. Dinner didn't need saving. It was just nice knowing he'd be the one walking through the door. Elias ran to the entryway the second he heard keys jingle. "Draven." The boy threw his arms around him before the door even shut. Draven lifted him with ease. "Hey, champ. How was school?" "I drew a lion. Wanna see?" "I better." He grinned. "Bet it's better than mine." Elias dashed off for his backpack. Draven walked into the kitchen, loosened his collar, and gave Sarai a quiet smile. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "You better now." Dinner was warm, simple, comfortable. Elias talked a mile a minute, and Draven listened with a kind of attention that made Sarai notice his posture more than his words. He wasn't sitting like a guest. He wasn't performing. He was just present. After Elias went to bed, Sarai brought out 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She didn't ask if he wanted one. She knew. He took the mug from her hands, fingers brushing hers a little longer than necessary. "So," she said, sitting beside him, "you're really showing up, huh?" He nodded. "Told you I would." "And you're not running?" "From what?" "From the wait. From the fact that this isn't glamorous. There's no press, no parties, no private jets." He smiled slowly. You think I care about all that now? I think you used to. I did, he admitted. I used to think love had to look expensive. I thought I had to shine everything I touched. And now I just want to be where I'm trusted. That word hit her. Trusted. She hadn't used it in years. Sarai leaned her head back against the couch. You know what scares me? He glanced at her, waiting. I don't know how to be in a relationship that doesn't require me to fight to be seen. Draven's expression softened. You don't have to fight me, he said. But I might forget that. I'll remind you. They sat in the quiet hum of the room, city lights casting gold through the blinds. Then, gently, Sarai said, Draven. He turned fully toward her. I didn't just disappear because I was hurt. I disappeared because I didn't want to resent you. His jaw tensed, but he didn't interrupt. I knew if I stayed and watched you become the man you thought you needed to be, I'd lose myself completely, and I was already halfway gone. He lowered his eyes, guilt curling in his chest. I never thought about what my rise cost you, he murmured. It cost us both something. Silence. Then, her voice broke softly. But you're back. I'm here, he said. For real. Sarai looked at him, eyes searching. Then she reached for his hand. Not slowly, not with hesitation, but like she'd wanted to do it for weeks, and finally allowed herself to. Her fingers were warm. Sure, he held them gently. Then, before she could pull away, he raised her hand to his lips. Not a kiss full of heat or demand, just reverence. She didn't move, didn't flinch. Her eyes locked with his, and then, after the longest moment, she whispered, I'm scared of needing you. He replied without pause, I'm not scared of being needed. That night, she didn't ask him to stay, but she didn't ask him to leave either. As he stood, lingering near the door, she followed. I'll see you tomorrow, he asked. Yeah, she said softly. But, earlier this time, he smiled. This wasn't a beginning. This was them, finally, arriving at a place where beginning could mean something. And as he left, Sarai leaned against the door, eyes closed, hand pressed to her chest. Her heart wasn't racing. It was steady, like it finally had room to breathe. The air in Sarai's apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that didn't press on you, but invited stillness. Soft lamplight painted golden shapes on the hardwood floor. Elias was asleep in his room. The faint hum of the white noise machine she kept by his bed filled the hallway. Draven stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city like he always did when words ran out. Sarai was curled up on the far end of the couch, barefoot, her legs tucked under her, a cardigan draped over her shoulders. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Neither did he, and that silence, for once, felt safe between them. You never used to be this quiet, she said softly, almost teasing. He turned, a slight smile ghosting the corner of his mouth. I used to think talking was the only way to be heard. Now I think maybe listening matters more. She didn't look away. I used to speak too little, thought silence was strength, but now I know. Sometimes silence hides the hurt. He crossed the room and sat beside her, not touching, just close enough that she could feel his warmth. We were two people guarding different wounds. Sarai nodded slowly, and we never gave each other space to see past them. Draven looked over at her, his voice low. I didn't know how to. You mattered more than I knew how to handle. That night, I didn't regret what happened. I regretted not knowing how to face it. Her eyes held his, calm but open. You disappeared the next day. I know. I left because you didn't come back. Not even with a word. I was a coward. She blinked at the rawness of his answer. I thought silence would preserve control, that if I said nothing, felt nothing, it would all stay manageable. But it didn't. It just left space for damage to grow. A breath passed between them. I'm not asking for a clean slate, he added. I know you rebuilt. I'm not trying to knock that down. I know. But if there's still space, he continued, I'd rather build beside you now. She didn't rush to respond. Instead, she leaned her head gently against his shoulder, a quiet sign of permission. Her fingers rested lightly on his arm. I never stopped thinking about you, she whispered. I thought about you every night Elias wasn't near me, wondering what he was like, if he smiled like you, if he'd ever ask why I wasn't around. And what would you say? She asked. That I was late, Draven answered honestly. But I came. The words sat in the air like a promise. She shifted to face him. Do you want to put him to bed next week? He blinked. You'd let me. She nodded. He likes you. He's just careful with it. So am I. A silence again, but this time it swelled with meaning. Draven leaned in slightly. Sarai, I don't want to earn back your trust with promises. I want to show up, even if I fumble, even if you never call this love again. I want to be someone steady, for you and for him. Her lips parted slightly, her gaze searching his face. You already are, she said, barely louder than breath. He reached for her hand, fingers threading slowly through hers. No pressure, no assumptions. You've changed me, and you've softened me, she whispered. Their foreheads touched. No kiss, no rush, only presence. Sarai stood after a while, walked to the kitchen, poured water for them both. Draven followed, leaned on the counter, watching her. She passed him a glass. You good at bedtime stories? She asked suddenly. He laughed. Terrible. Perfect. He'll love that. The laughter settled into a gentle hum between them. You know, she said, the last 3 years weren't lonely, but they were quieter than I wanted. I wasn't hiding, but I wasn't seen either. He stepped closer. I see you now. All of you. And that doesn't scare you? It humbles me. Sarai looked down at her glass, then back at him. I used to want the old you to come find me, to show up at my door and apologize. But I think I like this version better, the one who listens, who says less but means more. I didn't deserve that chance 3 years ago, and now. She moved in, close enough to feel the pulse between them. Now, you're not asking, you're showing. Draven brushed a finger down her cheek. I want to stay tonight, only if you want that too. She didn't answer with words. She took his hand and led him gently toward the couch again. They sat, talked more, about Elias, about the future, about nothing. Time passed like it wasn't being measured. When he finally left that night, he didn't kiss her, but her hand lingered on his chest for a beat longer than necessary. They didn't need declarations. They had started a new language, quiet, deliberate, and real. Their story wasn't beginning again. It was continuing. And for the first time, neither of them felt like they were standing alone. A week passed quietly, but it didn't feel distant. Draven came by every evening, never overstepping, never assuming. Sometimes he stayed for dinner. Sometimes he helped bathe Elias, or read from a picture book he barely understood. Other nights, he just sat with Sarai on the small couch in her living room, their knees brushing, their words simple. On Friday night, Sarai answered the door with a smile already forming. Elias had drawn a picture and insisted on giving it to Draven himself. It was mostly scribbles, but in the corner there were 3 figures. A man, a woman, a small child between them. Draven crouched to Elias's level, eyes warm but quiet. Is this us? Elias nodded, serious. You need bigger hands, though. Draven's heart softened. Noted, he said. Sarai watched them, her eyes stinging lightly. That night, Elias didn't ask for his usual cartoon. He just wanted Draven to tell a made-up story. And so Draven did, stumbling through a tale about a boy who liked stars and a mama who made the best pancakes in the city. And the boy's dad? Elias asked, blinking sleepily. Draven paused. Sarai was at the doorway, listening. The dad showed up late, Draven said softly, but he stayed. And every night, he made sure the boy went to sleep, knowing he was loved. Elias blinked slower. Okay. His thumb went to his mouth. His head turned into the pillow. And just like that, he drifted off. Draven turned to see Sarai standing there, hand over her mouth. He's everything, she whispered. I know. They sat outside on the apartment's small balcony later. It was quiet, save for the hum of distant traffic and a breeze that moved the wind chimes gently. Sarai leaned back into the chair, her cardigan wrapped loosely around her. "I don't know what we're doing," she said honestly. "I don't either, but I like how it feels." Draven nodded, then turned to face her fully. "I've been thinking. I'm moving offices. We're restructuring. I want a bigger team, more time, less travel." Her brows lifted. "You're making space for a life that matters more." Sarai studied him. "Are you saying that for me?" "No. I'm saying it because I've lived with the cost of ignoring it." She tilted her head. "What would you want this to become?" "I don't need to name it yet. I just want to stay close. Learn you again, earn your peace." She went quiet, letting that settle. He reached across and took her hand. "You know what hurt the most? Knowing I made you carry everything alone. Even when I didn't know about Elias, I still knew I'd left something unfinished between us." Sarai's voice dropped. "You were the first man I trusted with my heart. And when you vanished, I blamed myself for ever opening it." He winced. "You didn't deserve that." "No, I didn't." Silence fell again, but it wasn't cold. It was full of clarity. "You know what I remember most about that night?" she asked, glancing at him. He met her eyes. "What?" "You didn't rush anything. Even when you touched me, it felt like you were asking every time. It was raw, but it wasn't careless, and that's what made it so hard to forget." He leaned in a little, but didn't close the space. "I never forgot how you felt either," he whispered. "Not your body, not your breath, but your calm. You stilled me. You still do." Sarai stood then, slowly, and walked to the door. "Stay tonight." He didn't move right away. "Are you sure?" "I'm not inviting a stranger in, Draven." Her voice was quiet but certain. "I'm inviting Elias's father. The man I still see behind the one that hurt me. The man I think I still want." Draven crossed the space between them, slowly. His hand rose, cupping her cheek gently. He didn't kiss her. He just held her gaze. And she leaned forward, forehead to forehead, like they had done before. Only this time, they stayed that way longer. When they moved inside, the apartment stayed hushed. He took off his jacket. She folded the throw blanket. The small signs of comfort, of routine, of lives merging again, not fast, not reckless, but real. They didn't go to the bedroom. They lay on the couch, wrapped in one blanket, her head on his chest. He whispered, "I'll wake up here, for as long as you'll let me." She smiled against his shirt. "Then let's start with tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that presence can heal what absence once broke, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have given Draven a second chance, or walked away for good? Tap the like button if quiet love stories speak to you. Subscribe for more emotionally rich stories that remind us, sometimes redemption begins with simply showing up. This is Mr. Charles Stories, where love is raw, healing is real, and every story leaves a mark.